Hello and a very warm welcome to the latest episode of the Total Saints podcast. My name's Martin Starke and I'm joined by our panel of guests to discuss all the action from the last 7 days supporting Southampton Football Club. Now, we're streaming this episode of TSP live on our Facebook and our Twitter pages. You'll also find it on our YouTube channel. So good evening if you're watching along. And if you are following the live stream tonight, you can get involved in the conversation using the comments section. We'll get to as many as we possibly can. Maybe a comment or a question for the guys. It's always nice to hear your thoughts and see what questions you can come up with. Coming up this week on the podcast, we've got reaction to Friday night football under the lights at St Mary's. Norwich City were the visitors, and we're going to preview the two huge games. We've got West Ham in the FA Cup on Wednesday and Aston Villa away in the Premier League on Saturday. So first of all, let me introduce you to this week's TSP guests. Steve Grant, owner of SaintsWeb, the independent Southampton FC website. You've been at an FA Cup game today, Steve. Tell us about that. You've just got back.
Yes, yeah, I braved the Baltic conditions in East Anglia and went up to Felixstowe to watch the Saints women team. Unfortunately, get knocked out on penalties against Ipswich, but I did see that rare beast of the goalkeeper coming up for a corner and actually scoring.
And scoring as well,
which was pretty special. But yeah, unfortunately, they're out of the FA Cup, so just the league to concentrate on now.
And a good attendance, a good turnout, I gather.
1,200 up there, which apparently is a record for Ipswich women at that ground. I guess they may have had bigger crowds if they've played games at Portman Road before, but it didn't look as if that ground could hold an awful lot more than was in this afternoon. So no, it's very good.
Well, concentrate on the league then, I think, as they say. Dan Sheldon is the Athletics dedicated Saints reporter. So did you have a Saturday off, Dan, yesterday with the football being on the Friday night? Has it kind of thrown you this weekend?
It has really thrown me, but I was just thinking nothing has thrown me more than every now and then I'm kind of partial to going on TikTok and like scrolling for like 30 or 40 minutes. And then I was like flicking through to try and switch off from work. And then I saw me and I was like, hang on a minute, what's happened here? And it's obviously Total Saints podcast. I forgot. I mean, we're on TikTok now.
Yeah, that's right.
The weirdest thing. I was like, hang on a minute, that's me.
We're down with the kids.
So, yeah, that threw me. That threw me more than Friday night game being on a Friday rather than a Saturday.
And there's no Glenn this week. He's at home watching Brian Gunn's 100 Greatest Saves on DVD. But we are joined by founder of the TSP podcast, Ben Stanfield. So welcome, Ben. Thanks for stepping in. How's your weekend been?
Yeah, no problem, Martin. Nice to be here. I automatically feel like, because I'm covering for Glenn, I should say that I've not done anything this week. But no, I think generally it's been a quiet one. Had my head in a few spreadsheets at work. We've had a fair bit of snow up here in the Arctic Circle, so I've been trying to exercise my way through that. But yeah, obviously enjoyed the Saints game on Friday night, which I'm sure we'll come on to.
Yeah, it puts us all in a good mood, doesn't it? The biggest hello and thank you, of course, is reserved to our patrons wherever you might be listening or watching this week. So welcome to episode 188 of the Total Saints podcast. Now, it's going to be a very similar discussion to last week, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. A decent display at St Mary's saw Saints beat Norwich 2-0 with a goal in either half. Let's start with you tonight, Dan. Did Norwich make that difficult? It was quite a narrow game. It felt like we had to work a bit harder than maybe we've all thought for the points.
I think it looked harder than it probably was for the players, if that makes sense. I don't know if that does make sense, but it looked at times kind of like Norwich, where they were applying pressure without really applying any pressure, if that makes sense. They didn't ever really, you never felt that Norwich were going to score or do anything like that. But they did have moments in the second half when it was still 1-0 that you thought, oh, they are on top here, you know, kind of shooting into towards their fans. The fans were getting a bit more up for it. I must say, actually, I thought that the Saints fans were excellent on Friday night.
The atmosphere was incredible, wasn't it?
It was really good, wasn't it? And I do think Saints brass add a lot to it. I think that really does get people going. It certainly gets me going anyway at the beginning. But I thought it was just one of those games where Norwich, they're just not very good. They're going to go back down, aren't they? That's kind of obvious. Could have been 4-0, 5-0 for Southampton if they shot any other way but at Angus Gunn. So, yeah, it was a very comfortable night, but Norwich did make it look more difficult than it was at times.
Steve, what did you make of Friday night? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty easy, wasn't it? I think 2-0, I mean, as Dan suggested there, I think 2-0 flattered Norwich a fair bit. But I'm sure, I mean, the whole shooting straight at Angus Gunn thing, I mean, I was absolutely convinced at one point that basically we just watched that 9-0 Leicester game back, saw all the shots going through him and thought, that's the way to score. We're going to hit the ball straight at him. That would be absolutely perfect. And he'll just move out of the way. But no, it didn't happen. And a little bit frustrating because, I mean, our performances of late have deserved bigger wins than we've had. I mean, I kind of get that I may be being a little bit sort of over-egging the pudding a little bit there and sort of not sort of taking the wins as and when they come. But I think we shouldn't have a negative goal difference anymore based on the last handful of games. Spurs away, we should have won by 3 or 4. Everton, we definitely should have won by 3 or 4. And Friday night could have been any scoreline. I mean, as I say, it kind of felt too easy at times. First half, I thought we were possibly a little bit lacking intensity at times. But it was always a case of we are going to score. It's just a case of when. And it was just, I guess that's one of the things that we've become an awful lot better at, not just the team, but the fan base as well, of being really patient with the game. That we know that we'll create chances, particularly against bad defences. We'll create chances and it will come. You've just got to be patient with it. Everton, we didn't score until the second half, when half time we could have been, I mean, that game could have been done and dusted then as well. Friday night, the chances that we created first half probably weren't actually of the same quality. But second half, we were much better in terms of the quality of chances we were creating. It was just once again the finishing letting us down a little bit. And I guess that'll probably be the only downside, sort of negative that Ralph might look at with the analysts, in terms of, okay, we're now creating all these chances. We've just got to be a lot better at taking them, because against the better sides, you won't create as many. So you've just got to be a little bit sharper in the box there.
And Ben, on paper, another straightforward win. What were your initial thoughts after watching that?
Yeah, I agree with the guys. I thought it was a very comfortable, routine Premier League win. I think nothing would have been more Saints, Martin, would it, than they've gone to Spurs and won, drawn at Old Trafford, lose at home to the bottom team. So I think for me, it's kind of an indication of the mindset that this team now has, that they treated that like a professional game. You know, they went out there with the right attitude. I think, as Steve said, I think we ended up 27 shots to 8 or something like that. So there was lots and lots of efforts. But, you know, there was 7, 8, 9 out of 10 still across the pitch. You know, I'm sure we'll come on to talk about Oriel in a minute. You know, I thought he led by example, and I never really felt nervous. You know, we were talking about it just before we came on air. For me, it feels a little bit more like the Koeman days. You know, we used to turn up thinking that team will compete. They've got every chance of winning this game, whoever we were playing. And at the moment, with the run that Saints are going through, it feels very similar.
Yeah, I was saying, walking to the game, you kind of think it's very much, this would be very Saints-like to lose a game like this. But actually, in your heart of hearts, you thought, no, we're not gonna make a mess of it, and that's the confidence that they're playing with at the moment. So, Dan, just on the starting 11, no surprises, I guess, to see Kyle Walker-Peters keeping his place at left back.
No, none at all. I thought Perot may have come back in, but then it's like we kind of said last week, and it's the clip I saw on TikTok actually about Livramento coming in, getting the assist against Everton, and basically saying, don't drop me now, Ralph. And yeah, it's just a really good place to be in, that you can have that quality on the bench. So no surprises really, but it wasn't even a surprise seeing Livramento start, so none for me.
And Steve, that tactical change with Stevens coming on, we seem to be quite used to playing with that switch now. When he comes on, you know that we're going to shore things up, and they're used to that. They seem really well drilled. Yeah,
there was kind of a 5-minute period where Norwich had kind of got a bit more of a foothold in the game. They'd not really created a whole lot other than that Grant Hanley header where he skewed it miles wide. But you just kind of felt that, okay, we just need to kind of just put a bit of a break on this, grab control of the midfield back again. So bringing Stevens in allowed us to kind of go 3 at the back and effectively a 4 across the midfield, with the wing backs effectively playing in midfield. Really, it just gave us a little bit more control. And yeah, we were able to see it out, and obviously got added the second late on in fairly spectacular style. I mean, he only scores good goals, doesn't he? Really, it's been a while since he scored a tap in. I think the only one he's got for us was it against Palace, maybe, from fairly close range, bundled in the corner, maybe a few years back. But other than that, like, most of his strikes are from sort of the edge of the area. I mean, that one against West Brom, I thought would be hard to beat, that sort of flying volley. But the technique he showed for the one on Friday night was extraordinary. I did find it weird seeing a few people sort of claiming, Angus Gunn should be doing better with that. It's like, I mean, he's hit it about as hard as you could possibly hit a ball, and it's not gone far off. I mean, it's not right in the top corner, certainly, but the pace it's come at and through a couple of defenders, there's no way the keeper's getting anything on that.
Yeah, and you won't find us being rude about a goalkeeper. So let's just go through the 2 goals. Shea Adams hooking it in whilst laying on his back. But he's not going to score another goal like that, is he?
Do you know what? At the time, you didn't actually realise what a good finish it was. It was only kind of when you saw the replays, and it was all a little bit Sunday League just before that, wasn't it? Like Brandon Williams
laying on the keeper, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon Williams obviously tried to tackle it, and that inadvertently actually made it better for Livramento. His cross, then Aaron's tried to clear it, messed it up. Shea then had a swing, it hit him in the chest, and he's lying on the floor. Gunn goes down to try and pick it up, and as he does, he like scoops it up into the top of that. I mean, it was a really, really good finish, and I think I saw Dan tweet after the game that's 8 in 15 for him now, and I think I saw a stat of like 20 in 86 or something like that. But I mean, 8 in 15, if he's scoring 1 in every 2, I think it's a real indication of his form and his confidence at the moment. And as I say, a brilliant finish, and probably just when we needed it, because as Steve mentioned earlier, we'd had a few chances, and you sort of felt, when's that first goal going to come? You know, just before half time, it kind of gave the Saints the momentum they needed.
It looked like, when I saw that the Adams goal before seeing a replay, I immediately thought to myself, he's tried to do everything but score in that situation. And then when you see it slowed down, you actually appreciate that it was quite a good finish.
Bit of technique, a bit of tactics. And obviously a word on Romeu, Dan. I always get nervous when he shapes to shoot. I think that was his 3rd shot on target, maybe in the Premier League this season, but perhaps, I'm doing him a disservice. He an outstanding all-round performance on Friday. It
was. I jokingly asked Ralph, actually. I think where Ralph lives is in the direction of where Romeu was shooting, and I thought, did you kind of fear for your window when you saw Romeu lining up on the edge of the box? And Ralph was like, he does it in training all the time. But I think Ori came out afterwards and said it was the best goal he's ever scored. But I think with Ori, we've all come to expect, like, he's always a solid like 7 out of 10, but he can go up to like 8, 9 out of 10. He's just a class act. And the thing about Romeu is that, and I was going to tweet this, but I didn't in the end, but you'll struggle to find a nicer person. Like, genuinely, you will struggle to find a nicer guy playing football. He is just an all-round top bloke. And I think Southampton are so lucky to have a player like him, and his character, his temperament. He turns up, okay, it's kind of cliche, but he turns up every single day. Is such a brilliant example for the young players coming through. They do look at him. He's more than happy to kind of give them advice, help them, bed them into the first team environment. He's just a super guy. And he's along with Prowse, they just look really good at the moment, don't they, as a midfield pair? And they look so accomplished. They're so in tune with each other's game. They know where each one is going to be. And it's really paying off, because I can't remember the last time Southampton lost a midfield battle. They've just been, I know Everton didn't have a midfield, so they weren't going to lose that one. I mean, that was a relatively straightforward one. But even beyond that, they're just 2 players in total control of everything at the moment. And Romeu is just, I mean, when he's at his best, he's a joy to watch for me.
The interesting point I was going to make, Dan, and you'll have noticed this, having watched Saints for a couple of seasons now, is it was evident on Friday. He gets the ball. He now looks forward. He looks to play quickly and pass the ball forward. And I think that was a real issue for him over the sort of start of his career with Saints, was that he would get it, slow the play down, and then automatically look to play backwards. And I think it's really good to show the development. He, as you said, he's so well-rounded as a footballer now, but that's something that really stands out. He gets the ball. He looks to shift it on quickly and forwards.
No, definitely. And when Ralph's kind of talking about the more experienced players, he always says it takes them a little bit longer because their hard drive is more full than like a Nathan Teller, for example. So Romeu's played for several different managers. different systems or whatever, so it takes him a little bit longer. But I remember interviewing Romeu in back end of 2020, and he said to me, I could shut my eyes and I know where Ralph wants me to be in any kind of given moment. But as Ben mentioned, he really has, I think, added to his game the playing forward. Because the thing I always liked about Romeu was how comfortable he was in possession. If he's being pressed by 3 or 4 players, given his La Masia background, he's just so comfortable. I've always admired that. But now he can do that. And instead of kind of passing sideways or back to the defence or whatever, he can go forward. And I think that says a lot about the players in front of him at the moment. And it just goes back to that point of this probably is Ralph's 11, I think. They all know exactly where each other's going to be. And that helps massively, I think, for Romeu.
It's taken him a while to get to his 11, but it certainly feels like we're there now. Steve, another clean sheet at home, so we need to talk about the back four, the keeper. Another great game for Salisu and Bednarek. They just seem to be getting better by the week as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty comfortable for the most part. I think the only time I was slightly worried was when both of them, both the centre-backs seemed to be in the same corner of the pitch. When Norwich had that early shot blocked, I think both Bednarek and Salisu ended up in the chasing the ball into the corner. But fortunately, we had enough covering players. But yeah, I mean they've had 2 relatively comfortable games after. I mean, I have probably 5-6 games where it's been a lot more difficult. So they've earned that kind of rest period, I guess.
Yeah, and Dan, just a word on Adams and Broja up front. We were talking about their partnership last week. Obviously, the goal for Adams, but another top effort from Broja, I suppose. Never stopped running, did he, for the team? And he was unlucky. I still think he could pass a bit more maybe at the end and play somebody else in, but he's certainly terrifying the defences.
Yeah, he does. And given the form he's in, I think defenders are clearly aware of the threat. So him running in one direction will naturally drag a couple his way, which does open space for the players he doesn't pass to. But then at the same, it's like Glenn said, at the end of the day, he's a striker. You almost want him to take the shots. You'd rather him, we'd all be sitting here if he was passing it all the time saying, why doesn't he just take the shot? Why doesn't he just take the shot? So I don't particularly have an issue with the fact that he may be greedy at times. He's a striker. You expect him to do that. But I was more impressed with Shea. I just think Shea, he's in that kind of in a run at the moment where he's just so good. You see him like running back to make a tackle in his own half. You see him haranguing the defenders in their half. He's just all over the place at the moment. Physically, he looks really good. I think he looks a lot more. He's always been a tall guy anyway, quite a big guy, but he looks a lot more muscly than he has done in the past. And it's just brilliant to see. They're clearly the club's best 2 strikers. And it's, yeah, I mean, for as long as Broja's there, let's enjoy it.
Ben, what's exciting you the most about the team at the moment?
I think just the fact that we've got competition for places, and I think the way that they're playing at the moment, I agree with what Dan said. For me, on Friday night, despite where KWP was playing, that I think is our strongest 11 at the moment. I think players like Al Yunisi deserve to be in the starting lineup. It's great to have Perot back. I totally agree with what you guys have been saying on the pod the last couple of weeks. He's had a really good 4 to 6 weeks, Perot. It's interesting now that it almost feels like, and you don't want this on any of the Saints players, that illness or injury is the only way that other players are going to now get back into the side. And that's what we wanted, right? That's what we didn't have the last couple of years, is that competition for spaces. So I think, totally agree with what Steve and Dan said. The team know what they're doing. They all know their roles. The 2 number 10s know exactly where they got to be. The strikers are running the channels. And you can just see the amount of effort that's gone in on the training ground, Martin, and how they are now taking that out onto the pitch, which is always the acid test, isn't it? It's fine doing it in front of a few bushes at Staplewood, but actually taking it out in front of 30,000 people at St Mary's, delivering, and they're getting results. And I think that is ultimately, as we all know, that's where players get the confidence from what the manager is trying to tell them to do. So all in all, you can't complain at the moment. Football's a game of up and downs, and we're absolutely on and up, and hopefully it'll carry on.
Just a point on Elyounoussi, because Alistair, who's one of our patrons, got in touch during the week, and he said, and I quote, looked to be one of those stuff players that we signed on a ridiculously long contract. But having finally found a place in the team, is it time to think about offering him another contract? So I don't know where he's at in terms of his contract at the moment, Steve, but that's someone that's gone out on loan, proved a point, come back, and actually is starting to deliver now.
Yeah, we're getting there. It's been those situations are always tough. Players go out on loan. You never quite know whether they've gone out on loan with a view to, okay, we don't think you've got it, so therefore we're sending you out on loan to see if you can kind of put yourself in the shop window for a team at a lower level, because that's where kind of we reckon you are. Or whether it's a case of, right, no, we just need you to go and get yourself fit and get yourself some sharpness and come back, and then maybe there's an opening for you. And yeah, I mean that's what we've seen.
Niall's watching on Facebook. He says, good point about both the strikers, but what about the Broja situation? Do we need a plan for his exit now as well? That's something the club have kind of talked about, and they're going to be working on pretty hard, Dan. Either he's involved next season or he's not, and someone else will come in.
Yeah, it's almost out of in one sense, it's kind of out of Southampton's hands. All they can do is, if they want him, they can put a bid in. But if Broja carries on the way he is, they're not going to be the only team interested, and they're probably not the only team interested in him now. I would still personally just wait until the end of the season to see where they're at with him, because Broja's not lacking any confidence, and Lukaku's not exactly doing it at Chelsea at the moment. I'm not saying he would go to Chelsea and get in the team, but if Chelsea's saying to him, well, actually, you've got a very good chance if you come back here, I could see him equally going for that. It doesn't, from everything I'm told, it doesn't sound like another loan will be a possibility. So he's either going to go back to Chelsea and stay, or someone will have to come in and buy him. But I think Glenn or Steve said it the other week, every goal he scores, his price will go up. And
somebody else will notice him too, won't they?
Yeah, Southampton haven't just been bought by Saudi Arabia. They're still going to have a budget that they and a limit that they can spend on players, and it will get to a point where it just isn't financially viable for them to go for Broja if it is going to cost silly money. I mean, I don't particularly know what Broja's worth. I've seen reports of kind of 35 to 40, which I think is crazy, to be honest. I don't think he's worth that much. But yeah, I couldn't see Saints kind of going into that range.
And Ben, is it just a case of worrying about the things we can control, and what will be?
Totally. I think the club has shown, haven't they, the last 12, 18 months that they've got a strategy, they've got a plan. They'll already be working towards the summer. I think that the takeover probably helps to almost push on that strategy. We now know we've got the money to go after the players we want to. And I agree with what Dan said. And to be fair, I agree with the comments that have come in recently. We've just got to enjoy him while he's here. What will happen in the summer. There's been a lot of talk, hasn't it, about him wanting to be happy where he's playing in the future, his family wanting to be happy. There won't be many clubs around like Saints that can offer him that. So what will be. And for the moment, it's just about him and Shea hopefully banging in the goals and trying to get us high up the league.
The other thing that Dan wrote about this week, we've talked about, is Fraser Forster, Ben. I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this. We've talked about it over the last couple of weeks on the pod about the goalkeeping situation and what should go on there. Would you like to see Fraser sticking around next season? What would your best case scenario be for the goalkeepers next year?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been in the Fraser Forster camp. I think I tweeted at the start of the season that he would have been my starter for the first game at Everton. Obviously, McCarthy came in, and to be fair, he did really, really well, didn't he? I think Forster's shown the last few weeks that he can, with a consistent run of games, offer the team something. I find him a little bit more communicative at the back. I find him a little bit more of a presence maybe than Maka is. But for me, they've obviously got a decision to make there. There's obviously been rumours that, and I know Dan's reported it, that McCarthy's already kind of signed a contract. So that may have already made their mind up, and this is all by the by. But ultimately, I think he's someone that, we know he's good mates with Prowse. We know that he's obviously well thought of around the club. It may well be that they actually decide we'll give him another year. We don't need to shop for a goalkeeper this summer. But I think we've spoken about it a lot, haven't we, on the pod? And I think it's the one position at the moment in the team that does need to be looked at. And they really need to sort of think about probably the longer term strategy. I wasn't surprised to see Angus Gunn go in the summer. I know that there's obviously been rumours about him potentially taking the shirt longer term, but I think for me at the moment they're the best two goalkeepers we've had over the last 3-4 years, and it probably is just a case of sorting out which one they want for next season onwards.
Yeah. And Steve, up to 9th now. Is that the best we can hope for? Is that kind of like the top of where we're aiming for? Is it about hanging on in there now and just staying ahead of Brighton, or do you think we can push on and try and catch the likes of Wolves?
I mean, I think given Wolves' absolute garbage performance today, by the sounds of it, we could catch them. 5 points for teams that that are playing well isn't insurmountable with the number of games that we've got left. The problem is that obviously the teams above you are generally playing well as well. I mean, Wolves, as I say, Wolves weren't good today by all accounts, but they've been very good for the last few months. So maybe that was just a blip, and they'll be fine come next week. But I mean, if Wolves are going to have a stutter, then okay, if we can take advantage, great. I don't think it's completely beyond the realms of possibility. But obviously, with the start, well, kind of the autumn that we had, we've kind of given everybody a little bit of a head start, haven't we?
Yeah, and Dan, top 10 was talked about at the start of the season, and I know again you've mentioned that this week, but they'd be happy with that, wouldn't they? Ralph getting in, finishing the top half of the table for the first time since he's been here. That's going to be his aim.
Well, that was the target at the start of the season. They sat down and worked out, well, what can we do? They looked at so much so much data in terms of little tweaks that we can make here and there, in terms of schedule, workload, recovery, all sorts, and with the idea being finishing in the top 10. So that was a target in August, and as it stands, they're well on course to do that.
It's going to be a tough run of games though, Ben, because you look at Villa, Newcastle, Watford, Burnley, Leeds with the new manager, I guess, coming in, teams that are going to be fighting to stay in the division. So it's not going to be easy if we're going to maintain that 10th or 9th in the league.
No, not at all. But I think the positive for Saints now is that realistically, we're probably one win from safety, and ultimately the pressure, as we know, pressure is a funny thing in football, isn't it? Dan's laughing. He obviously thinks it's more than that. But, but what I would say...
I think they're about...
Safe already.
Coming down. Yeah, they're safe.
Yeah. But I suppose the point I'm making is that for Saints, Martin, the pressure's off. They can go out and enjoy all those games and play with an element of fluidity potentially and pick up more points than they might have if the pressure was on. So they've got nothing to lose now. Yeah, there's a few tough games. We've still got Chelsea, Arsenal, and Liverpool, I think, at St Mary's as well. None of those are going to be easy, but there's 12 games left. There's no reason that they can't win half of those if they put in some really good performances.
Is there anything that worries you about that little run of games, Steve? Obviously, Newcastle in their leads with the new manager.
I mean, Newcastle have obviously picked up, but you kind of also have to look at the fixtures that they've had over the last month. They've had a very kind run in order to build up this bank of points that will now disappointingly almost certainly see them safe. But I would still put as massive favourites in that game a week on Thursday. And yeah, I've got no particular concerns. I'm not quite sure of the justification for them putting it on the Thursday. Was there anything clarified? Did Newcastle play Monday night or something? Because playing on a Thursday seems weird in a just sort of vaguely normal midweek. But yeah, I've got no concerns over that game other than okay, Newcastle were slightly better than they were. Leeds, I'm not concerned about. If you look at their, apparently they've got the 19th biggest wage bill in the league, which suggests that actually last season was a monumental overachievement. And I think when we beat them 1-0, I mean we thrashed them 1-0, didn't we, at St Mary's? That game was so one-sided it was embarrassing, and yet we only got the one early in the second half. I would. To be honest, I would kind of expect that side to struggle for the rest of the season. I think, obviously they've been missing two key players in Bamford and Phillips for the vast majority of this season. They're two quality players that a club with that wage bill, you can't miss those sort of players because you don't have the squad depth to be able to cope with it. That's kind of the sort of thing that we found last season, wasn't it? When you have a handful of important players unavailable, all of a sudden your first 11 is significantly weaker. And Leeds have found. What have they shipped? 20 goals this month. That's just extraordinary.
Whoever gets that job's going to have a big task on their hands.
Oh yeah, I don't think we even conceded 20 in the February after conceding nine on the second day of it. So that's some kind of implosion by their defence. You kind of wonder who's likely to have. Obviously, Richard Keys has obviously suggested Big Sam should take the job. because obviously they're best mates. But
Jesse Marsh, isn't it?
Yeah, that seems to be the name that's going around. But it's difficult to see anybody who doesn't have experience of that team and this league kind of coming in and being able to hit the ground running. That seems a tall order for someone like him. I think an appointment of someone like Marsh, who I think the job he did at Salzburg was excellent, but didn't quite work for him at Leipzig. I think he's the sort of guy you bring in the summer, give him the full summer to work with the players. I just don't think they've got the time to go with a sort of system manager, if you like.
Couple of comments just to get through. Joe says Broja's done brilliantly, but 30 to 40 million for a striker with 2 years in the first team is ridiculous. He needs to pick a club that's going to develop him further because he's still a little rough around the edges. I think we kind of covered that. We agree with that. So thanks, Joe. And Charlie, one for Dan. I know what the answer to this is, but he says, read the contracts. The perception is that some players have already been offered deals. Assuming that is correct, why are the clubs seemingly being so guarded in announcing them? It's the question we just don't have an answer to, isn't it, really?
Not the question for me, I'm afraid.
We need to be asking somebody at the club what's going on. It's very strange. Let's move on to West Ham, which is Wednesday night. Now they scraped past Kidderminster in the last round. What sort of game can we expect in the cup, Ben, on Wednesday?
Oh, I think it'll be a tough test. We know what to expect from West Ham, don't we? They're a big physical side. I was looking at their lineups against Kidderminster. Obviously, before that, they played Leeds and they played pretty much the first 11 with Areola in goal. So I think they will probably turn up with a strong side on Wednesday night. I think, to be fair to them, my view on the sort of owners and stuff like that is probably like many Saints fans and probably many football fans. But to be fair, I think David Moyes, when he came in for the second stint, he said something along the lines of winning is what I do. And I sort of scoffed at that a little bit. And to be fair to him, that's what he's done. He's turned them into a really good competitive side. We've done well against them this season, which is unlike us, drawing at home, winning up there. It was a fantastic Boxing Day result, wasn't it? But yeah, I'll go back to what I said earlier. For me, we're pretty much safe. Dan thinks we're already safe. I think we can give the cup a good run. We can go out there. The pressure's off a little bit. There's no embarrassment in losing to West Ham like there might be if it was a potential banana skin like the Coventry game. So I think Saints are on the up and they can go out there and play with confidence and take their focus off the league for a little bit and just have a good go.
So is the game more important for us, Steve, or West Ham, do you think? Are they going to have their eyes on the league and maybe not on the cup?
Yeah, I think they're in the position they're in where, let's be honest, their form the last 6 weeks has been pretty wretched for the most part. They, by the sound of it, they played quite well today and deserve to win. But for the most part, pretty much since the turn of the year, they've been a little bit ropey defensively. Conceded a lot more goals than they did in the first half of the season, and of course they've had the Kurt Zouma distraction as well. But they should be looking at trying to get in the top four. I think West Ham have obviously got a lot of games coming up. They've got 2 very difficult games with Sevilla to come in the midweeks immediately after this cup game. And you would imagine that the priority for them will be kind of a combination of the Premier League and the Europa League. I would imagine. It would take something pretty spectacular for them to not be back in Europe next season through their league position. But while they've still got a chance of getting top 4, I think that's got to be their priority, and I would expect their team selection to slightly reflect that. Although I do kind of also qualify that with the fact that they don't have a huge amount of depth in their squad. Antonio has no backup. They continue to run him into the ground, which I find absolutely extraordinary given his injury record. And we've obviously seen their defensive record when their first choice centre backs aren't available. So yeah, I would make us probably slight favourites, depending on what. I don't see any reason why we don't put our full strength side out Wednesday. There's no real reason to kind of make any wholesale changes. That's for sure.
You're nodding there, Dan. Will you just be happy if this one's done in 90 minutes and we don't need to worry about extra time?
Well, I don't have to put a paper together, so it's fine. I'm happy for extra time, penalties, the lot. I'm all for it. Yeah, I think I agree with everything Steve said. Really, it's for me, West Ham. They've got bigger fish to fry. I think their target is Champions League, isn't it? They're a couple of points off United. I think that will be their focus. My colleague Roshane, our West Ham correspondent, wrote a piece. I think it was at the end of last week or this week, saying that, as Steve mentioned, that West Ham are just running Antonio into the ground, and you have to rest him for this game. I'm sure Southampton would be quite happy if that's the case. Again, agree with Steve. If I was Ralph, I'd make 2 or 3 changes at most. I don't think you need to make any more than that. It's not worth it. And I mean, if I was playing up front, I'd probably wear a few more shin pads. Bearing in mind who they've got in defence. So.
Ben, who starts for you on Wednesday? What changes? I can imagine Stuart Armstrong perhaps won't, because we'll save him for the weekend. But what about the rest of the team? Would you make a few changes?
Yeah, I think ultimately, I was thinking earlier, we're going to have a day and a half extra rest, which I know at this time of the season probably isn't massive, but it's a little bit, isn't it? So maybe there'll be players that will recover before Wednesday night that might not have otherwise. I think potentially, do we know if Nathan Redmond will be back for that? If he is, then that's probably
he's fit. Redmond's
right.
Fit.
So that's potential straight swap with Armstrong, isn't it? But I mean, otherwise, I don't know if he'll play Caballero. He played quite well in the last round, didn't he? A couple of good saves at the end. Will he give him a run out? Given that they've obviously then got the game next weekend as well. So I go back to what I said earlier, Martin. I don't think they should make loads and loads of changes. I think he should go. And to be fair to Ralph, in the time that he's been here, in the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, he's always taken them seriously with his lineup. So I don't think he will make loads and loads of changes. But I think potentially Stuart Armstrong having a rest and maybe the goalkeeper, and potentially Perot getting a game at left back, that sort of thing. But otherwise, I think just go with what you got.
Not bad players to come in, are they? Not bad players to come in. One of the questions we had from last week was, do we want a cup run or do we want top 10? Steve, it seemed more pertinent perhaps to mention that this week before we go into the West Ham game. Or I guess the other thing is both.
Why not both? I mean, they're not mutually exclusive. And particularly with Brighton faltering, Villa seemingly not. I mean, they obviously won at Brighton yesterday, but they don't seem to be any great shakes. Everton nowhere near. Newcastle too far behind, and Palace not really doing an awful lot either. So, yeah, I mean, it's basically us and Wolves for around that 8th and 9th position. I don't think, not convinced that Wolves are good enough to overhaul Spurs when Spurs have got Kane and Son playing as they did yesterday. So I think it's I mean we're fairly well kind of placed at the moment for the league. I think realistically we're not looking too far up, but we don't have to look over our shoulder at all.
And barring any injuries, Dan, the club will want the same, won't they? Cup run, top 10. That's the aims from the start of the season.
Yeah, without a doubt. I don't see them sacrificing one for the other. I look at their next 4 fixtures in the league, but you could make a case for them winning every single game of those 4. If they do that, then top 10 is, in my eyes, top 10 would be pretty much done. They're not going to miss out on top 10 if they do that. I think they just need to take, if they can take advantage of the momentum they're in over the next kind of 3 to 4 weeks, then they will find themselves in an FA Cup quarterfinal and they'd have top 10 in the bag.
Happy days.
Sounds easy, doesn't it?
Yeah, the Claude Puel days all over again. Amazing. The good times are back. Let's do predictions then. It was a point each last week. Everybody correctly predicted that we would win. Nobody getting the exact score. If you are watching the live stream, feel free to stick your predictions in the comments, just for a bit of guidance. Steve, do you want to go first? How do you see the West Ham game playing out in the Cup?
I think we'll, as I say, we'll go in as slight favourites, and I think we'll probably show that. So yeah, why not 3 on the bounce? 2-0.
2-0. Dan, how do you reckon?
2-1.
2-1. I'm making a note of these so we don't have to go through and listen to all the pods. Okay. Glenn has also sent his predictions in. He went for 2-1 as well. But Ben, feel free to jump on just for fun. What do you reckon?
Well, I spent 4 years as a host, Martin, predicting Saints to lose every week. So I feel like as a panelist now, I should go for a win. But yeah, no, I'd probably go 2-1 after extra time. I think it'll be one of those sort of, there won't be many chances, but they'll just edge through and we'll take that. Josh
White says we seem to like a 2-0 lately.
Classic Jose team.
A lot of 2-1s as well, and a 3-2 in there. So after the cup on Wednesday, back to league action. Aston Villa on Saturday at Villa Park. We beat them 1-0 back in November. I think that was the game that saw Dean Smith lose his job. What have you made of them under Steven Gerrard, Steve? What sort of a team can we expect?
Well, they had a fast start under him, and everyone was proclaiming Gerrard as the second coming of Christ. As I mean, it's not like Villa fans to go massively overboard with their own sense of self-worth, is it?
Oh God, let's not upset them this week.
Well, gets us the clicks, doesn't it? No, I mean he clearly had a positive impact at the start. Coutinho was a signing that they would have had absolutely zero chance of making without him being the manager. And initially it looked like that was great signing, and they were going to they were the ones that were likely to be sort of challenging Wolves and Spurs for sort of seventh place. But it's all kind of gone off the rails a little bit the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, since Boxing Day.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I mean they've
won twice.
But they've been middly. Sounded like they were fairly comfortable winners at Brighton yesterday, but Brighton are kind of on that sort of downward trajectory at the moment, so difficult to read a huge amount into that. But they're like Villa's recent results have been fairly poor, to be honest. Performances hadn't been great. I mean, everything I've seen is that basically I think Gerrard again tried Ings and Watkins up front alongside each other again yesterday. Watkins scored, Ings didn't, so he's still stuck on 3 goals for the season.
2, is it? I think.
But it's that partnership isn't really working because they are basically the same player. Only Watkins is about 5 years younger. So there's something not quite right in that team system at the moment. I mean, obviously Ings is going to go and bang in a hat-trick on Saturday now. I've said that. But
we said that last time though, didn't we? And he didn't even play. So
well, yeah, I mean he didn't even make the journey down, did he? But he's obviously had a fair bit of criticism this season, rightly or wrongly, I don't know. I mean, I've not seen many of Villa's games. But for whatever reason, it's not quite working for him. And we've moved on. So yeah, I mean, and beware the curse of the X as ever. But other than that, I kind of look at Villa and think, well, they're all right, but they're not as good as people seem to have been making them out. Like the last couple of years has always been like, oh, Villa have won the transfer window, and then they end up in 12th. It's like, yeah, that was a great victory in that mythical challenge and trophy that they won.
Ben, what have been your thoughts of Villa at the moment? What sort of game do you think that's going to be on Saturday?
I think it'll be a tough game. But then I was looking at our record. I like to do my research, obviously. I saw we'd won 7 of our last 9 against them, I think, in the last 3 visits to Villa Park. So it's been a bit of a happy hunting ground for us. I think, you look at the sort of spine of their team. I think they are pretty solid. I like John McGinn. He's, the sort of player that gives 100%. Martinez in goals obviously got the presence of a cabbage. No, I'm joking. He's a pretty good keeper, actually. I think he's pretty solid. And then, yeah, you look at sort of Watkins, Ings, whoever might play out of those. Obviously, Danny's going to want to score against us and prove a point, I'm sure. But they're a good side. I think the only thing I'd say with Villa is you never quite know what to expect with them, which I'm sure you could probably say that about lots of Premier League sides. So I think if Saints go up there and play like they can, I think Villa will come onto them, and we're pretty good when we want to be on the counter and things like that. So I think we've got a good chance.
Does it depend how Wednesday goes, Dan? I know we were sort of joking about extra time and penalties, but we saw that in the previous round where they played the extra half an hour and we were worried that might then impact on the league game. Or is this where we see a real test of the squad depth and the intensity?
Possibly, maybe. I think it'll be interesting to see what Rav does in that sense. If it is going to extra time on Wednesday, Rav's the kind of guy he wants to win every game he's in. So I wouldn't expect to see like 3 or 4 key players walk off the pitch, in like the 80th minute, unless Southampton have either won the game or clearly lost the game. So it might be a test, but I think Southampton will be up for it anyway, I think, because of the kind of Danny Ings factor. But I think even if Danny plays and scores, I don't think he's proved a point. I think Southampton have proved a point in selling him, to be honest, in terms of getting £30 million for a player, which I didn't think was a good idea at the time, because I never think it's a good idea to sell your best player, but you can't knock that decision now. I think Elyounoussi scored more goals than him this season. Broja, Prowse, Bednarek's probably got there, at least very close to Danny in terms of goals scored. And Adams, I think Adams will be up for it. I think Adams has really stepped up in Danny's absence. So I actually can't wait for the Villa game. Probably because it's my last game before I've got some time off. But Villa Park's a great place to go. Really good atmosphere. Don't buy into the whole Steven Gerrard thing, like Steve, to be honest. I'd be quite worried if I was him, because this clearly is his audition for the Liverpool job. I mean, if this goes terrible, he won't get that job. And I was just looking at the teams they've lost to. So they beat Norwich mid-December, and they've won 2 games since then, and that was against Everton and Brighton. They've lost to Brentford. They drew with Leeds, lost to Newcastle, lost to Watford. I mean, there's nothing for Saints to kind of be too worried about, I don't think.
So let's stick with you then, Dan. Your score prediction for Villa Park?
Let's go 2-1 again, Southampton.
2-1 with Danny Ings scoring for Villa.
Danny Ings to stay on the bench.
Looking at his bank account. Steve?
Why not 4 in a row? 2-0.
2-0. We're all just going to stick with 2-0
Loves a
forevermore.
2-0.
And Ben, how do you see this one working out?
I think there'll be goals. I'm going to go for 2 or draw, and Danny Ings isn't going to score.
2-2 and no Danny Ings. I'm making a note of this. So, right. Thanks very much. A lot of 2-0s as well, as you can imagine in the predictions. So before we finish this week, big shout out for some of our loyal and our much loved patrons with promotion this week as well. In our Matt Letizia tier, we've got Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy and Phil Cook. Nick Hingston has joined the Matt Letizia tier. Now, he was in the Ricky Lambert tier and he's moved himself up. So cheers for that, Nick. Appreciate the support. In the Francis Benali tier, we've got Nick Reed and Matt Hall, and there's loads more online about becoming a TSP patron. Ben, do you just want to say a bit on that, some of the benefits and where we can find out more?
Oh, you've put me on the spot there, but yeah, thanks. But no, I mean, you're right. So it's patreon.com. There's 4 tiers, I think. Bobby Stokes, Ricky Lambert, Francis Benali, Matt Letizia. All of the money from that goes into the pod, the production of this, the StreamYard, the production, things like that. And yeah, there's perks. We're going to give a T-shirt to everyone that's been a patron for at least 6 months this season. So currently, Alex, the producer, and myself are working with Alistair, who's one of our patrons, on the design of that. We're hoping, I think, to have a few more things before the end of the season, potentially something live, which again, patrons will be able to get preferential treatment for as well. So yeah, look up the info on patreon.com/Total Saints Pod.
Nicely done. Cheers, Ben. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Dan. Enjoy the games this week. Don't forget to follow this podcast wherever you might be listening. On the socials, it's at Total Saints Pod. You'll find us on Twitter and Facebook. You can drop us an email via the website as well. Always nice to hear from you, and we'll get your questions involved if we possibly can. Thanks for listening. Stay safe. Enjoy both the games this week.